Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. So you've been hearing all this buzz about Silvercorp Metals, ticker symbol SVM, and you're probably wondering, is this a stock worth adding to my portfolio?
Yeah, it's a really good question.
Right. Let's dig in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so their latest quarter Q3 of fiscal year 2025 showed some pretty darn impressive numbers. What stood out to you most?
Well, that record revenue of $83.6 million is pretty hard to ignore.
Yeah.
That's a 43% jump year over year.
Yeah, no kidding.
And that, to me, signals they're not just kind of riding a wave. They're operating efficiently and potentially, benefiting from favorable market conditions for silver.
Yeah.
So
I was also really struck by the across-the-board production increases. We're talking, 11% more ore mined year over year, 16% more milled, and a 16% jump in silver production.
Wow.
Even lead production is up by 2%. But here's the thing that caught my eye.
Okay.
Zinc production actually went down by 10%. Why would that be happening in the middle of all this growth?
Yeah, that's a great observation.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something investors should look into further.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a strategic decision. Perhaps they're shifting their focus to, those higher performing metals like silver and lead. Or maybe they're facing, some depletion in a specific zinc heavy mine.
Right. Or it could just be market conditions specific to zinc.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
External factors like zinc pricing, that can play a huge role.
Yeah.
So we'll need to kind of get a better look at their financials to fully understand that zinc situation. But it's definitely something to keep on your radar.
For sure. And speaking of financials, analysts are predicting some pretty strong growth for Silvercorp.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking earnings up 23.8% annually and revenue projected to climb 21%.
Wow.
That's got to have investors feeling pretty excited.
Those numbers are definitely encouraging. But it's always important to remember that, past performance is not a guarantee of future returns.
Right. That's a really good point. So should investors just hold off until those Q3 financials come out?
Well, for now, it's wise to be cautious, but there's another important factor we need to consider.
Okay.
The stock's valuation.
Right. Their forward PE ratio is currently sitting at 8.88.
Right.
Which seems incredibly low.
Yeah.
Especially with all those promising growth projections.
Yeah.
Is the market missing something here? Could Silvercorp be a hidden gem?
Well, a low PE ratio like that can definitely be a sign that a stock is undervalued. But we need to kind of look deeper than just that one number.
Yeah, so we can't just jump in based on a seemingly low PE ratio alone.
Exactly. It's crucial to consider other factors as well, like their debt levels, the strength and experience of their management team, and of course, the overall economic climate.
Right.
All these things help to paint a more complete picture of a company's true worth.
Yeah, so the PE ratio is just one piece of the puzzle. We need to assess the bigger picture before deciding if Silvercorp is actually undervalued by the market.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And speaking of getting a clearer picture, there's a really important date coming up that all Silvercorp investors should mark on their calendars.
Okay.
February 11th, 2025.
Got it. Why is that date so critical?
That's when Silvercorp will be releasing its Q3 Fiscal 2025 unaudited financial results.
Oh, okay.
This report is going to give us the most detailed insight yet into their financial health and offer really valuable clues about their future prospects.
Okay, so this report could either confirm some of the trends we've been discussing,
yes,
or potentially reveal some big surprises.
Exactly. It'll be fascinating to see how their actual financials measure up against those analyst projections, and I think we'll gain a much better understanding of their overall strategy.
Yeah, and speaking of strategy, there's another recent development we should discuss. Silvercorp's decision to raise $130 million US.
Oh, wow.
Through a convertible senior notes offering.
Yeah, that capital raise definitely sends a signal.
What kind of signal are we talking about here?
Well, for one, it could indicate that Silvercorp is getting ready for a period of substantial growth and expansion.
Okay.
This capital could fuel new acquisitions, further exploration projects, or maybe even be used strategically to pay down existing debt.
Oh, interesting. So this move adds another layer of intrigue to the Silvercorp story, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get some hints about their plans for using this capital when they release those Q3 financials.
So much to look forward to in that report.
I know, right?
Okay, let's quickly recap what we've learned so far about Silvercorp.
What?
We've got a company showing very strong operational performance with impressive revenue growth
Uh-huh.
and increases in their production of silver and lead.
However, we also can't ignore that dip in zinc production. We need more information to understand what's driving that trend. And hopefully, the upcoming financials will shed some light on the situation.
Right. Then there's the intriguing factor of that low PE ratio, which hints at the possibility of the stocks being undervalued. But as we discussed, we need to be cautious and look at the broader picture before jumping to any conclusions.
Exactly. A thorough analysis of their financials, their debt levels, and the quality of their management team is absolutely essential.
Plus, we've got that recent capital raise to consider.
Right.
What are they planning to do with all that money?
Yeah.
Maybe the upcoming Q3 financials will give us some answers.
I'm certain they will. It's going to be a very telling report.
So listeners, we've given you a lot to consider about Silvercorp Metals. What are your thoughts on the company? What aspects of their upcoming financials will you be watching most closely?
Right.
We'd love to hear your perspective. Don't forget to subscribe to Investing Talk Podcast and share this episode with anyone interested in Silvercorp Metals. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll be back with part 2 of our discussion on Silvercorp right after this.
Looking forward to it. You know, as we've been talking about Silvercorp, it's interesting to consider how the market perceives a company like this.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they're primarily a silver producer, right? But they also mine lead and zinc.
Right.
So are they a precious metals play, a base metals play, or a bit of both?
That's a great point, yeah. It does seem like investors might be struggling to categorize them.
Right.
Which could actually be impacting their valuation.
Exactly. That lack of a clear category, can sometimes lead to a company being overlooked.
Right.
Or even undervalued, especially if investors are narrowly focused on just one aspect of their operations.
Right. It's like they're getting penalized for being diversified instead of rewarded for it.
Precisely. And in Silvercorp's case, their recent performance really highlights the value of taking a holistic view. Even though zinc production was down, their overall revenue and profitability soared thanks to the strength of silver and lead.
So that dip in zinc production, while initially concerning, could actually be a sign of strategic decision-making.
Absolutely. It's possible they intentionally scaled back zinc operations to capitalize on, more favorable market conditions for silver and lead.
Interesting.
They might have data suggesting that those metals will be more profitable in the near term, or perhaps they're seeing stronger demand.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So instead of assuming the worst, we should be open to the idea that Silvercorp is making calculated moves to optimize its operations.
Exactly, and that's why I'm particularly interested in what those upcoming financials reveal about their operational strategy.
Yeah, it'll be like getting a peek behind the curtain.
Exactly. That kind of transparency is invaluable for investors.
So we've talked a lot about what we hope to learn from those upcoming financials. But let's zoom out for a moment and talk about Silvercorp's overall investment thesis. What are the key factors that make them an attractive investment in the first place?
Well, for starters, they have a strong track record of operational success. They've consistently increased production and generated solid cash flow.
Right. And they operate in politically stable jurisdictions, which is a huge plus in the mining industry.
Absolutely. Political stability significantly reduces geopolitical risk for investors, which is a major concern in this sector.
For sure. And we can't forget about the long-term potential of silver itself.
Right. Silver is a precious metal with a wide range of industrial application. Demand is expected to remain strong, particularly as technologies requiring silver continue to advance.
So there's a fundamental underpinning to Silvercorp's business that goes beyond just their operational performance.
Exactly. They're operating in a sector with robust long-term prospects, which is a key consideration for growth-oriented investors.
Okay, so we've got a history of operational excellence, politically stable jurisdictions, and a solid market for their core product. What else should potential investors be thinking about?
Well, we've already touched on this, but it's worth emphasizing. Silvercorp's valuation appears to be very attractive right now.
You're talking about that low PE ratio again, right?
Yes. A PE of 8.88 is hard to ignore.
Yeah.
Especially when you factor in their growth potential. If they can deliver on those analyst projections, their stock price could see significant upside.
So there's a potential for both earnings growth and multiple expansion.
Right.
That's a pretty powerful combination for investors.
Indeed, for investors seeking exposure to the precious metal sector, I believe Silvercorp deserves a very close look.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, before we wrap up this part of our Silvercorp discussion, I want to get your overall takeaway.
Okay.
What's the key message for our listeners?
I think my key takeaway is this. Silvercorp Metals is a company that's firing on all cylinders right now.
Mm-hmm.
They have a proven track record of operational success. They're operating in a sector with strong long-term prospects,
Mm-hmm.
and their valuation is undeniably attractive.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, there are always risks to consider.
There's always a... Right.
The mining industry is inherently cyclical,
Right.
and commodity prices can be volatile.
So even though silver is in demand right now,
Mm-hmm.
there's no guarantee that prices will stay high forever.
Exactly, and we need to see those upcoming financials to confirm that their recent performance is sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Are they managing their costs effectively?
Mm-hmm.
Are they investing wisely for future growth?
Yeah.
These are all critical questions that need to be answered.
So while there's a lot to like about Silvercorp, investors need to do their due diligence and make sure they're comfortable with the risks.
Absolutely. Investing should never be a blind leap of faith.
Great advice. Before we move on to part 3 of our Silvercorp conversation, let's remind our listeners to subscribe to Investing Talk podcast and share this episode with anyone who might find it valuable.
Yeah,
We always appreciate your engagement, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on Silvercorp in the comments.
for sure.
We'll be back right after this brief break with more insights on Silvercorp.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast. You know, as we've been discussing Silvercorp, I keep coming back to that $130 million capital raise.
Right.
It's not every day that we see a company raise that kind of capital.
Yeah.
So it really makes you wonder, what are their plans?
Yeah, it certainly is a substantial sum
Yeah,
and raises a lot of intriguing questions about their strategic direction.
exactly. The company hasn't explicitly laid out how they intend to use the funds,
Right.
but we can maybe make some educated guesses
Right.
based on their past behavior and current industry trends.
Absolutely. One strong possibility is that they're looking to further expand their existing operations, perhaps increase production at their current mines or develop entirely new ones.
Okay, so that would align with their history of focusing on organic growth.
Exactly.
So this capital raise could give them the resources needed to significantly ramp up their production capacity.
Especially with silver prices at their current levels, expanding production could be a very profitable move.
So expansion is definitely on the table.
What?
What other strategic options might they be considering?
Another possibility is that they're eyeing acquisitions. They could be looking at smaller silver mining companies that might be ripe for acquisition at a favorable price.
Interesting. So they could use this capital to consolidate their position in the market and gain even more scale.
Precisely, acquisitions can be a very shrewd way to not only get bigger, but also to diversify their portfolio and gain access to new resources in geographical areas.
Right, so it's not just about growth for growth's sake.
Exactly.
It's about strategically, making strategic moves to enhance their long-term prospects.
Exactly. And knowing Silvercorp's history of prudent financial management, I'd expect them to be extremely thorough and strategic in their approach to any potential acquisitions.
Right. They've earned a reputation for being very disciplined with their capital allocation.
Yes.
I wouldn't expect them to deviate from that now.
I agree they'll be looking for companies that represent a strong strategic fit and offer genuine value.
Okay, so we've got expansion and acquisitions as potential uses for this capital. Are there any other possibilities we should consider?
There's one more.
Okay.
And while it might not be as flashy as expansion or acquisitions, it's certainly crucial for any company's financial health.
Okay.
They could use a portion of this capital to pay down existing debt.
Ah, yes, debt reduction.
Right.
It's not as exciting as expanding or acquiring new assets, but, essential for maintaining a strong financial foundation.
Absolutely. Reducing debt lowers interest expenses, improves cash flow, and strengthens a company's balance sheet.
Right.
These are all very positive developments.
Yeah, it can make a company much more attractive to investors.
So while it might not grab headlines, using this capital for debt reduction could actually be a very wise move by Silvercorp.
Yes.
Especially if they're, anticipating any economic headwinds on the horizon.
Exactly. It's all about positioning themselves for sustained success, even when market conditions become more challenging.
All right. So we've outlined 3 primary ways Silvercorp could utilize this $130 million, expansion acquisitions, or debt reduction.
Right.
It's also possible, as you mentioned earlier, that they'll opt for a combination of all three.
That's certainly a possibility they could strategically allocate portions of the capital to each of these initiatives.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see what those Q3 financials reveal about their specific plans.
Yeah.
I'm definitely eager to gain more insight into their strategy,
As am I.
their outlook for the future.
Those financials are going to be a must-read for anyone following Silvercorp. Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our discussion on Silvercorp Metals. I want to thank you so much for joining me and sharing your insights.
It was my pleasure. I always enjoy discussing these investment opportunities.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Investing Talk Podcast. We hope you found this episode informative and helpful as you evaluate potential investment opportunities if you enjoyed the show. Please don't forget to subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave us a comment. We'd love hearing from you. And we'll see you next time for another insightful discussion on Investing Talk Podcast. Until then, happy investing.